Hello, everybody. Welcome back from your cup of tea. I'm John Gapper, Associate Editor of the Financial Times, and in this session, Advertising is Under the Spotlight. Later, our expert panel will debate the future of advertising, who are the winners and losers in the battle for attention and brand loyalty. Is everyone in this hall going to be crushed by Silicon Valley? First, though, Linda Yaccarino, Chairman of Advertising and Client Partnerships at NBCUniversal. For those of you who do not know Linda, she leads monetization and partnership strategy for NBCUniversal and is now building that globally in partnership with Sky. The size and strength of NBCUniversal means that Linda's influence is felt by competitors, marketers, talent, and consumers alike. Linda is modernizing an iconic media giant, and she's using some of the lessons learned from having a front row seat to two of the biggest mergers in history, Comcast, NBCUniversal, and before that, AOL Time Warner. And anyone who survived AOL Time Warner has my respect. Today, Linda will tell us how NBCUniversal thinks about globalization and why consumers are leading the charge. First, let's set the scene.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so honored to be here at the Royal Television Society. Though to be honest, I was nervous before coming to Cambridge. It's quite a different place for me, and you all are a new audience. But I realized we share some great history together. Both of our organizations have been around for about 90 years. RTS was founded in 1927. NBC started out in radio in 1926. And I think we both look darn good for 90 years old. But just think about all the change that has taken place over the last 9 decades. Television has gone from being experimental to a part of our everyday lives. Back then, it was a challenge just to get those pictures onto one screen. Today, we have more screens than we know what to do with, on our walls or in our hands. For all that's changed, I'm proud that both of our organizations have always been at the forefront of transformation. And that's why I'm here today, because the television industry has reached another inflection point. People have an infinite amount of choices, which means media companies and marketers are clamoring to build and to find scale. And that scale allows marketers to reach more people and grow their businesses. For a company like ours, we grow our business so they can grow their businesses. The need for scale is why we've seen so much consolidation across the media industry, including Sky joining the Comcast NBCUniversal family. And today, you can't achieve new scale without going global. Of course, going global is not simply about crossing borders or oceans, or in this case, even ponds. It's about asking questions about who we are and who you want to be. So with the time we have, I'd like to speak about a few things. First, the biggest choice companies face as they build global scale is between two very different paths. Second, how we make that choice by remembering what our responsibilities are to consumers. And finally, I'd love to share some lessons that we've been learning along our journey. So when I think about the choices that companies have to make today about building global scale, we see a very clear fork in the road, 2 paths. And you can learn a lot about a company if you know which path they're on. There's the path that we've taken over the last few years at Comcast NBCUniversal, where we put humanity, people, at the center of our strategy, where you build scale deliberately and intentionally, and where you build towards a shared vision. But there's another path, a path that technology has made easier to follow or to fall into. Some companies have built massive user bases online around the world, but they did so faster than they or society could anticipate the impact. In some cases, this approach has resulted in an incredible cost for people and for brands. So it's worth asking whether the path to scale is worth the scale of those problems. The point is, every company has to decide which path they're on. And the question is, how do you choose? And when you start down a path, how do you make sure that you stay on track? And there's one way to think about that question. The theme of this year's convention is content, consumers, and everything in between. At a company like ours, we like to believe we're the everything in between. I mean everything. We've got a mix of content, data, and distribution that really doesn't exist anywhere else. We're quite fortunate. On top of that, we're the conduit, the connector, the in-between of audiences, incredible storytelling, advanced technology, and global brands. Very few companies sit at the intersection of all of these things, as well as doing them well. But it's more about capabilities. Being the everything in between comes with clear responsibilities. It means investing in consumer experiences that people can share and enjoy across the globe. It means partnering with advertisers to give people the content that they want, they love, anytime on every screen. And above all else, the everything in between means doing every part of your business the right way. Most of the time, it's actually pretty obvious. Use data safely, act with integrity, activate your moral compass, have the common sense and the courage to choose between what's right rather than what's easy or fast. And because we're the everything in between, our philosophy as we continue to scale globally is really simple. We choose to prioritize, protect, and value humans first. Our entire business always has been and always will be centered around consumers, audiences, viewers. In a word, people. It's our responsibility to adapt and evolve, to give consumers the best possible experience. And when we engage and serve those consumers better, we also create better opportunities for our brands and our advertisers. After this keynote, we're going to talk about the question, will data kill advertising? But the way we see it, data is just a tool to make better decisions. And it's all of us in this room who are making those decisions. Just like an algorithm will never replace creativity, it should never replace our responsibility to people. In other words, data won't kill advertising. Bad decisions will. Data can tell you what to do. It can't tell you how to do it. It's up to us to choose the right path forward and put consumers first. And already we've learned a lot from the road we've taken. For example, when it comes to achieving big, bold transformation like global scale, you have to be guided by a vision. When I first joined NBCUniversal, my team was tasked to bring the company together, all of our networks together as one portfolio. And we did. But here's something we didn't expect. We set out to transform our own company, but what we did rippled across the industry. Soon our vision for one portfolio became an industry standard. But I'll be honest, it's one thing to bring together various parts of a single company. It's another thing to bring two different companies together under one single strategy. I've had a front row seat, as discussed in my intro, to two of the biggest mergers in media history, AOL Time Warner and Comcast NBCUniversal. And as we know, one of them went much better than the other. So for me, this is a particularly interesting moment. All of the consolidation out there makes sense on paper, and it did quite a few years ago. Back then, competing visions and cultural differences disabled the two companies to reach their full potential. Meanwhile, this partnership, Comcast, NBCUniversal, and Sky, has already been successful, and here's why. We will not allow ourselves to get sidetracked by competing visions. Instead, using our different strengths together to grow, because sharing a vision can drive you forward. Sharing values brings you together. Instead of competing, we've been able to successfully collaborate and integrate because we both know we have to put consumers first. That's what will keep us around for another 9 decades. Together, we're building a new global news service to serve a global audience, and we're leveraging Sky's experience to help us build NBCU's new streaming platform, Peacock, to ensure that we give consumers the best possible experience. We're developing a new global advertising business, inviting brands in because marketers need global options that they know is strongest when they bring premium content together with people. It all sounds pretty logical, right? But it's not always easy. In this business, it's hard to admit there's things someone else can do better, to put pride and egos aside for the sake of consumers for what's best for the industry. It takes a certain kind of courage to learn from each other, courage to put people first, because that's who we serve. I believe if we saw more of this kind of courage across the industry, we'd make a lot more progress, a lot more quickly. Ultimately, the path to global growth is all a matter of choice. Some companies, people will tell you that the ends justify the means and growth at any cost is fine. But you know what? It's not fine. And I would argue, in the long run, it's actually probably quite temporary. And in our experience, the means are everything, especially when you're the everything in between. So how you use data and how you invest in technology, tell stories, make decisions, you serve the consumer better. They all matter, because the means of growth define who you are and who you want to be. For us, it's been a great journey, and the lessons have been clear. Sharing a vision and values, you have to have courage to learn and to lead, and you always have to remember, again, who you serve. If you could do all of that for people and for your business partners, then there's nothing we can't accomplish together, and I'm excited to talk more about it on the panel with you all today, so thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Linda, for that insightful overview of how NBCUniversal is adapting and thriving in a disruptive world. The themes that Linda touched upon are at the heart of our debate. Digital technology, data analytics have shaken up television advertising, and commentators such as me often sound the death knell for the entire industry. But is it smarter and more resilient than we think? Here to discuss how quickly everyone in this room is going to have to find another job are Philippa Brown, Chief Executive of the Omnicom agency PhD. I'm told the first woman Chief Executive of an Omnicom media agency, which is a shameful, but thankfully she's put it right, oversight. Rupert Ellwood, Head of Marketing Communications at Waitrose, where, again, I'm informed that 48% of the voters in this country shop. At least 48%, and Nils, Leonard, founder of the creative agency Uncommon. Welcome. I'm going to start with Nils. Nils, I work in the newspaper industry, an industry of falling sales and print advertising. So I thought I had it bad, but you represent people who make creative ads that people not only don't want to watch, but are prepared to pay not to watch. So what are you doing wrong?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stats. People, they ran this survey where they asked everybody, they had this statement, you look forward to the ads on telly as much as the programs. And in 1991, that was true. So we'd rub our hands together as the ads came on and go, oh, I can't wait to see what happened. That's obviously fallen year by year to the point where we're in kind of negative equity and people are now spending money to avoid what we spend our lives making. I guess our take on that is, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff out there, but the biggest driver for me was a question that someone asked me once. And I think this is behind all of this, really. And they said, how do we go from being a company that sells people stuff to being a company that people wish existed? And I was like, holy shit, that's not an advertising question. That's a brand question. You know, and in the world right now, 3/4 of brands could disappear from our shelves and no one would care. That's an actual stat. Havas did that research. You know, you've got the head of sustainability at IKEA saying we've reached peak stuff. We have enough things. Stop making things. And I think all of that's really, really revealing. I think it's tempting to get drawn into this conversation and talk about how much we hate ads. What's right behind it is how much people hate brands, or some of them, or don't even care about them. Don't even register in hate. And so I guess I would say that's quite inspiring in a kind of weird way. I think it's really motivating to think about why all of us exist. You know, you just gave a speech about why you guys matter in the world. And I think that question is far more critical. Maybe.
But that's not, you're not saying, you sound like you're saying it's not your fault. It's not the fault of the ads, it's the fault of the people who breach.
No, I think we've made some absolutely appalling work. I think we've force-fed culture with unbelievable amounts of shit. I think we've just really, and I think the danger of it all is that we're replicating that behavior digitally. Nothing's changed. We're still trying to force-feed people stuff. Now, I kind of think your point about data or revealing what people want, there's a simple thing people want. They respond to new, don't they? They respond to originality. They respond to people with purpose. That's attractive, what matters. So I think it's just a wake-up call. Partly responsible. I'll take part of the blame for sure. I've been in it 20 years, so I've probably made some howlers, but...
Okay, so we've heard a little bit from Linda about the immense amount of disruption in the industry, the use of data, the rise of the big platforms, direct targeting, direct-to-consumer. I think I'm wearing a pair of trousers I clicked on a button on Instagram to buy. So I'm going to ask Rupert, how does Waitrose use digital? What are the advantages you see in it as opposed to the classic 30-second television ad?
I guess for us, digital, it's a bit of a misnomer because everybody talks about digital as being something separate to marketing, but for me, it is just marketing. It's an opportunity to connect with customers. And so our approach is to effectively look at digital as one of the ways in which we can talk to our customers. I suppose some of the principles that we've done are, of course, digital grew from the .com businesses, and so has always been closely associated with those, converting sales online, et cetera. But we have a very important online business, but actually 90% of what we do is in stores. And so digital has really been, for us, something as part of our overall marketing mix. And we actually use it a lot more to drive store sales, in store and across all our formats, convenience. And I mean, we've been doing some very interesting stuff around helping customers navigate local products that they want to find. And so it's part of an overall mix.
Forgive me, I'm ignorant. Which platforms do you use and how do you find those local customers?
Well, so we're very fortunate that we have 7 million customers who are in our loyalty program. And so we have a lot of data which we understand from that. And then we work with, obviously, third parties around hash data in terms of being able to target those customers in an appropriate way. But it's done in service of them in terms of helping them. It's not about a hard sell. You know, it's really important. And we're ruthlessly focused on the creative that sits behind it as well. So we're not just serving up content which is not of the same standard that we would put in all of our channels.
So I like those words you used. We're finding them in an appropriate way. There's a lot more consciousness among consumers like I that how are they finding us in an appropriate way through our phones? Where is this coming from? Do you get worried about that? Do you get worried about spooking people?
Yeah, I guess we have customers who opt out of our marketing, and they're very clear with us they don't want to be part of it. But I'm not worried in the sense that the way we're set up means that we don't sort of fall into those traps of annoying customers or overloading them with data or information that they don't want. I'm very clear that I think the way we're set up doesn't, we don't allow that to happen.
Okay, let's get to influencers. I'm old enough not to recognize 100% of influencers, but you use influencers. How do you use them?
Well, again, it's a term I don't really like, influencer, because the people we work with, particularly in social channels, are just friends of Waitrose. They're people that love Waitrose. We have different levels of influencer, I suppose. We have some rock stars that we work with, all of whom I know personally, and I talk to regularly because they give me great feedback about what we're doing in our business. They tell us about Unpacked and what they think about Unpacked and that we need to do more. So they're friends, really. They're people that know us and love us. They just happen to have a lot of followers on Instagram. And so that's the starting point, is that they are people that are genuinely connected with our brand, love what we do, and therefore are really happy to work with us.
And what are they? Are they chefs? Are they ordinary people? Or how do you find them?
Yeah, well, so let's take...
They're your friends.
Yeah, maybe there's a bit of that. But no, let's take the Happy Pair, for example. They're a vegan twins who based in Ireland. We have a strong following of vegan, of people who eat vegan food. And so, you know, they love what we did. And actually, we started selling their product, and they work with us. So there's a good... that's just one example. But we have lots of them. We might see them posting stuff in our stores, and then we might get in touch with them and say, oh, you clearly have a great interest in us, you know, we might meet them, or... So there are different ways in which we connect with them. There are clearly, when we do larger campaigns and we want to get to more people, then there are macro influencers that we work with, and that tends to be done through some of the agency. But most of the influencers we work with are people we know and that have a relationship with us.
Right. So, Philippa, you know, one of the things whenever I write about advertising and marketing that strikes me is this has become a very complex world. Lots of technology, lots of different agencies, as Rupert mentioned. And marketers, I guess, sort of thinking, I want the new thing, not just the traditional thing. What's the balance? What are marketers coming to you to, what do they want from their marketing and their sales activities, and what are you saying to them in terms of the balance between traditional brand advertising, these new channels?
Well, it's the role of the media agency to actually give that advice as trusted advisors for our clients to help them balance that between the long and the short. I guess in the 30 years that I've been involved in marketing and advertising, what I have seen is a huge shift from short-term objectives, I need the sales now, I need something to happen today, to, you know, from more long-term brand building. And I think that's what's happened in that we talk very often in marketing about the funnel. And the top of the funnel is more about the brand building and awareness, and the bottom is optimization, which digital tends to do very well at. And unfortunately, it's really shifted right down to the bottom.
You're right at the bottom of the funnel.
Right at the bottom, and we're almost optimizing an audience away. And I think that's a massive shame. I think, you know, I read...
Is it a shame because it's less creative or less interesting for you, or
yeah,
you've all become direct marketers? What?
Yeah, well, I think the balance has gone too far. I think there is a role, of course, for acquisition and short-term needs and objectives, but I think there's a huge role as well to do long-term brand building, which, of course, TV is the number one at doing that. And I do think that a lot, if I look at the briefs from clients, and again, I'm not blaming other people, but I have noticed that the briefs from clients are much more short-term in their nature. And I just wonder whether, because the nature of business and the pressure on people's businesses, that actually marketeers and brands have just become less risk-averse. And with quarterly earnings, and they have to deliver today, that they just don't want to say, well, look, it might take a year, 2 years to start shifting some of those behavioral metrics that will then build a long-term brand, that then will lead to sales. I think nowadays, marketeers are opting for the easy answers.
So is that the tyranny of the data, that you can measure it in the short term, whereas a big campaign, thoughtful, creative by Nils, who knows what's going to happen?
Partly. I mean, I think, you know, if you can measure it, marketeers and CFOs are happier.
Yeah.
They just are.
Because they can go back and say they did the right thing.
Of course. And I guess it's our role as well as media agencies and creative agencies to challenge that thinking and to put forward the cases of helping them feel more comfortable about the more risky sort of decisions they might have to make.
It's interesting to think of what I think of as the traditional industry is now being perceived as the risky choice. Linda, just tell us, you talked about capabilities and you talked about the way NBCUniversal is coming together. And one thing that struck me with your comparison with AOL Time Warner was my perception, completely from the outside, with AOL Time Warner was they put together an internet company and a broadcasting company, and it sounded great, but nobody had any real idea of how those things would fit together, and the technology was cruder, less advanced. Now it seems like there's a greater technological opportunity, but you're facing the difficulty that you've got people in all these different silos, different expertises. So just tell us a little bit about how you go about creating a capability, people working together, the right skills.
Well, I can talk about AOL Time Warner. I think you mentioned that you give a lot of respect to those.
I do.
We actually call ourselves survivors of that ill-fated merger. But when you think about it, it actually bringing together what you call traditional, and I would argue that should be looked at as a positive word today, and an internet company, as it was labeled back then, it was actually a merger before its time. The big difference between that and a merger like a Comcast NBCUniversal was that the consumer wasn't ready. The consumer wasn't ready to say, I'm looking at things on all screens at any time in a time-shifted view. The market just hadn't evolved yet. But on paper, quite frankly, it was a vision of the future. And an additional cultural clash that just could not work. But bringing a company together has been a really amazing thing, and I've learned so much with Comcast and NBCUniversal coming together because the market was at a different time. And we actually had the opportunity to bring our assets together, which were largely complementary, to catch up to where the consumer already was, and simultaneously build to a vision that we're living today in a time-shifted world across many, many screens, now ready and geared up based on our announcement yesterday with our new streaming platform, Peacock, to be in a world that kind of untethers them from being anywhere at any particular time. So I think the big difference is, as I talked about in my talk, it's about really sharing a vision of bringing the company together, but really to serve the consumer, to get them the right ads at the right time on any screen. I would argue a little bit about the value of, it's not really about the linear companies coming together for top of the funnel dominance. No one ever argues that, right? It's really about how much smarter television has become. And we can demonstrate quite factually from a lot of data that the impact of that top of the funnel brand value actually impacts a great deal at that bottom of the funnel to those, I won't mention them, who claim complete ownership or attribution at the bottom of the funnel. So as television has gotten smarter, consolidation and mergers of companies have brought them together. The actual strength and leverage of a company like NBC, Comcast, and Sky is actually quite profound because we're able to do a lot of those things that were once solely claimed by the bottom of the funnel advertisers. And if I could for 1 second put in a little context. So NBCUniversal bills about a little over $10–11 billion a year. If we don't do that in 2020, next year, someone else will be sitting in this chair in my place. But during our market time of year, we actually transact about 70% of our advertising a year, our relationships and negotiations. So we just came out of that marketplace, billed $7 billion a year. We broke the $1 billion mark this year in digitally native advertisers. So from Peloton to Wayfair, to Facebook, Amazon, and Google. So those advertisers, whether it's direct-to-consumer brands who face a limitation from performance marketing only, to those advertisers who want massive, immediate reach with great advertising, I might add. Thank you, I'm sure some of them are your clients. If not, we'll talk after this. That the value of how television has evolved in face of necessity and more competition has become a great opportunity for a company like ours.
Okay, so those guys believe in it. Well, we've got tremendous expertise, specialist expertise on this panel, but we've got the ultimate experts in Leeds with Ranveer, the people who really know about ads because they watch them and decide whether or not to turn over or skip. So Ranveer, give us a bit of insight up there from the people who know.
You just scroll through, or do you pay? Or do you pay not to watch them? Phil, actually, here, you love the adverts on TV. You don't scroll through them.
No, I like them.
Yeah, you mad bloke. I mean, the advertisers in the room in Cambridge will love you, but most people will think, oh, God, get through the adverts. What is it that catches your eye, and what kind of adverts?
I think comedic adverts, so a bit of comedy, some bit of life, bit of fun to them. I like those type of adverts.
Which ones are catching your eye and ear at the moment?
VW advert, the Tiguan advert, we're taking the children to school. I think that's quite good, quite cleverly done.
Yeah, and do you like to follow? I mean, because a lot of it is about sort of a story, isn't it? Some of the adverts have a story to them.
Yeah.
Do you like, that's the sort of thing you like?
Yeah, like the meerkat things.
The meerkats,
like
yeah.
Yeah, really good.
But online, it's a different world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I know you've just bought a vacuum.
I have.
You told me before. And now you're getting loads of adverts for vacuum cleaners on whenever you're on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Do you think it's helpful to you? Is it about you? Do you feel, yeah, great, they're giving me more of what I've already wanted?
No, I think it's quite intrusive. I wonder where they've got their information from to be and I feel bombarded by that. I don't like it. I don't mind, TV adverts. I can look for it. If I want something, I'll look for it and find it. I don't want it when I'm on Facebook or social media.
But then, of course, you get it for free because they're selling their advertising, right? So the question is, Josh, I mean, we were talking to you yesterday in Gen Z. You were telling me that you kind of expect it. Any people you follow on Instagram are trying to sell you stuff all the time. What is your feeling in general about? Do you feel bombarded, or do you feel
I feel a bit bombarded, but I feel like advertising's changed. Like on Instagram, you get that a lot more, and on YouTube, I feel like it's changed from being on TV.
Yeah, so the people you follow on Instagram, you don't mind, do you, if they're trying to... Because there is a sense of responsibility on, brands using influencers to flog their stuff to you.
I feel like that's how they get their products across. They use the influencers to get their products across, so it's just, necessary in this day and age.
And you were saying to me earlier that would you rather have advertising than have to pay subscription to whatever else, YouTube, for example?
I feel like, I'd just rather have advertising because I don't feel like it's worth it to pay that subscription.
Oh, there you go. Interesting stuff. Thank you for all your views from here, and back to you, John, in Cambridge. I hope that was helpful.
Very helpful, thank you, Ranveer. And it sounds like quite an optimistic message
You don't have to quit our day
for the
jobs.
panel. Yeah, right. I'm just going to press Linda on one point. When you talked about the funnel and the way these capabilities are coming together and technology, with this partnership with Sky's AdSmart technology, it's interesting the way that actually technology in the placement and targeting of ads is coming to television in a way that it wasn't in the past. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was actually one of the first bits of progress that we made once we merged, which is now about a year with Sky. And my team came to London to meet with our new Sky partners. And one thing we immediately found of how far ahead of us in the US, specifically NBCUniversal, Sky was in ad targeting. So we immediately asked if we could partner and borrow it, but what's become, what technology as it has matured and sophisticated, it enables the ads that used to be so generic and what we in the US call addressable advertising or specific, ad targeting. What used to be one generic, let's say, Toyota advertisement, now we're able to deliver to different homes on the street. It could be a Prius, it could be a Camry, to deliver to them in real time the ads that they particularly want. So per the consumer's video that we were just looking at, less intrusive, less bombarded, but relevant to what is interesting to them. And I think you'll see that it's early days for all of us in television advertising, but soon to come and soon to scale. And there's a lot of talk today about using social media influencers and the power of them from a relevancy standpoint. But if you look at if a television company does it right, the celebrities that are on television are actually mega influencers. If you use one of our late night hosts in the US like Jimmy Fallon, who has significant global appeal with 20 million YouTube subscribers to his channel, we looked at it and we had a hunch, well, he's probably one of the biggest influencers there is. So we actually entered into an agreement with him and T-Mobile in the US, one of the biggest wireless companies, to launch a massive campaign, including all the things that the YouTube and Instagram influencers do, but use the massive scale that Jimmy Fallon and The Tonight Show have to push their products forward. So I think, again, back to early days, you will see the dominance of television and the sophistication of even the celebrities come to know that they have to be more relevant and real time to today's consumers of what they're expecting.
Great. Neil, so you've told us about the things you've done wrong. You and your clients have done wrong. Just tell us what a good ad is. What does it do for a company, and what do you try to achieve for a company when everything's going in the right direction?
I want to kind of mention something that's just attached to your comment and it slightly answers that, which is a lot of our clients, and this is a good news story, I think, for us. A lot of our clients, startup businesses, are coming to us about 2.5 years into their journey, absolutely smashing it, and they've started and grown their business purely in digital, so via social, on Insta, all that other stuff. And then they wake up and they realize they've not been building a brand, they've been growing a business on digital. And they kind of go, what?
Like what sort of?
Chili's bottles are a great client of ours, really, really cool guys, really innovative company. We've probably all got one in this audience, absolutely smashing it, making a difference in the world, all that other stuff. And they wake up and they go, Christ, we're spending, 15 grand a week actually, and we've woken up and then they suddenly go, well, what are we? What do we mean in the world? What are we doing? When people say to us, why do you exist and what are you for and what else would you make? They don't have an answer. They haven't thought about the brand. They've thought about growing the business incrementally because that's what you do when you start up. And they have all these questions about scale and reach and really telling their story and all those other stuff that they want to do. And I think the best work translates a really ambitious client with a genuine purpose in the world to people in a way that's new, surprising, emotional, powerful, funny. And it just has to, it's the same rules apply for content, right?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say, and when you're able to take that level of creativity and speak on behalf of a brand with purpose, and you marry it with premium content in a way, whether it's Premier League or the Olympics or the right piece of content for that brand, that's the long-lasting value.
That's it. I just wanted to add one thing there, which is really interesting. I think this conversation I heard previously as well about reach and globality. The gaming industry are masters of depth. So what they worked out, right, they kind of went, okay, actually what we've worked out is this many people love FIFA. Now, loads of people love FIFA, but they worked out this many people love FIFA. So rather than trying to reach more people with FIFA, we're going to reach this many people with so much depth in FIFA, from season passes to new kits to this. I still think we've only scratched the surface in content in terms of you guys, but in advertising, we've not done that at all. So if you love a brand or you have a relationship with Waitrose, right, you can kind of go, my God, how much deeper can we go here? How much more can we innovate in the experience? That's where I'd rather play, rather than force feed more people new messaging in media that they just want to escape from.
Okay, well, let's hear from Rupert. So are you force feeding people, or are you, when you think about what you're trying to achieve with brand advertising, what is it?
Well, there's two things to that. First of all, we're a media owner on our own right, so we have our own content channels like our weekly magazine, our weekly paper, which are really significant. So from that perspective, we are creating really deep relationships through those channels. But when it comes to brand advertising, what we can't do in those channels is create fame. And actually, that's what's important about TV advertising, is we want as many of our customers and also people who are not customers to see that, because that's how you create brands over a long period of time. And it is hard to justify the spend, and I spend a lot of time internally educating people time and time again, because that's a big part of my job. But it is absolutely tried and tested. If you want to build a brand in the long term, you want to build fame, you have to advertise on high-profile channels like TV.
In the old days, years ago when I covered media, it always struck me as kind of weird. Television had this fantastic thing where the audience was going down a bit, and as it went down, mass got more expensive, so you had to pay more to reach the mass audience. And I always felt like it's going to reach a cliff at some point when it's no longer mass. So where are we now?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt it's becoming more expensive. To buy, particularly with younger audiences, it's more expensive. But that's when VOD becomes really, really important. AdSmart, we're really close to what's going on in that area. Cinema, we use that a lot to extend our reach. But then we have a multitude of other channels. So I was thinking about the talk earlier about YouTube. So we were actually the first, we are the only UK retailer, food retailer, that has a silver play button on YouTube. Now, we did that because we built an audience. We put fantastic content to inspire people, and people went to find that content. We didn't put a huge amount of paid support behind it. And 50% of all the searches that we get to our website are for recipe content. So we are inspiring people through our other channels. So it's all about the mix, I guess, overall. But it's true that we have to keep a very close eye on how that technology, how the TV kind of world will change, and we will change with it, and it will become an ever-evolving thing that will be part of our marketing mix, and we'll constantly review it. The other thing I want to say on that was the innovation that we get over the last few years. So we were the first people to do an ad-funded program on Channel 4 called Weekend Kitchen with Waitrose. So we basically took our weekly paper and made it into a TV show, and it was a fantastic, we were quite pioneering, if you like, in that world, because content's always been a big thing for us. We've had some great innovations through ITV, through Channel 4, through all of the, and those are the things that I really hope we continue. The other thing is, we only have, say, 60 seconds or 90 seconds to tell a story in a TV ad. I'm so excited about if you want to learn about Waitrose, I can't do it in 30 seconds. I can't do it in 90 seconds. The things that we do, that our buyers, the extraordinary lengths that we go to, the way we rear our pork and our pigs, those stories cannot be told in 90 seconds. So the other thing I'm excited about
You're making a movie. Or?
Well, exactly. I think that is the future for us to work with the broadcasters because we've got amazing stories to tell, and actually some of the depth of those stories could be told better in long-form content.
I'm losing track of which is the creative on this panel.
I love this. So I'm
going to ask Philippa. We heard from Ed Williams earlier about trust in brands and purpose and what brands are about and the way that not only brands but also broadcasters need to convince the new consumer, the more skeptical consumer. So just tell me what you think brands themselves need to convey in advertising and how they do it.
Well, I mean, obviously they need to be authentic, but if we can just take the full topic of trust, I'm actually a chair on the Advertising Association as well, I chair the board, and one of the big topics is about the diminishing trust in advertising.
Right.
And I was fascinated to hear the guy on your panel talking about bombardment and retargeting, and he bought a Hoover and he's just been bombarded. It's a real huge issue with advertising at the moment and with messaging.
It's too efficient.
It's almost spooky if you're just being followed around, and they were saying, what data have they got on me? And so trust is really, really...
The first guy that spoke was sort of like, I like watching 30-second ads.
Yeah.
I know where I am. Yeah. It's a good story.
Yeah. Well, trust, it's a real selling point for television. It is the most trusted media in my view. It is filtered content of high quality with big production teams, amazing actors. It's got all of that, and the targeting of television, whilst it is, not maybe as one-on-one and has the targeting capabilities, although AdSmart is helping that. I think the quality and what it can do from a brand perspective outweighs.
Is that an issue of the ad itself or where the ad appears? Like if it sits in a traditional environment, forgive me, Linda, a traditional environment, safe, high quality, all the things that NBC does, or it sits on YouTube but it's the same ad, Is
Well,
that
it's-
different?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's quite interesting that, because I think it's a bit of both. Sometimes what I'm finding is that the creative isn't actually being adjusted or amended to the environment in which it appears. So I think AdSmart helps with that. We also have what's called dynamic creative optimization, which is really interesting, where you can get more personalized targeting, well, advertising and advertising messages. So I think it's a bit of both. I really do.
And when you were, it was interesting, I thought, what Linda said about the funnel, and you were talking about the funnel earlier. Yeah. So it's more possible to target, it's more possible to get to smaller segments, it's more possible to personalize. Personalize sounds good, but do you inevitably lose some of the broader impact and the brand stories you do?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've noticed with all the data and tech capabilities that we now have, they have not really inspired creativity. I think they've inspired the short-term acquisition, performance time for marketing, but I struggle to find any data-inspired creativity. So you've got all this data, what has it told you that can inspire a great idea, a great big idea? It's all down, again, bottom of funnel acquisition. That's how data's being used at the moment.
Yeah, and it's one of the things we're so excited about currently, at NBCUniversal, and I would argue the TV business at large. I think it's a combination of things. The impact of data and targeting, the future of what we believe will be a new frontier for creativity and advertising, but really the unprecedented investment in IP or in content development. So when you look at NBCUniversal alone, that's $25 billion this year that we have spent in content, either development or acquisition. When you read all the trades about what, I think it was yesterday or the day before, what Netflix paid for Seinfeld, a 30-year-old-ish show, is astounding. But it delivers the message that premium IP is everything. And the way we're very bullish is, how do we partner to bring together the stories that we agree with you can't be told in a legacy 15, 30, 60-second amount of time? That we're able to come together and marry our IP together, especially in a time-shifted or streaming universe. How do we bring that together? What's the new frontier of the partnerships between a publisher and global marketers? That, we think, is the next panel that I'm sure we'll be talking about soon.
What I'd love to just add to that, to your thing, because it's been a recurring thing as a creative, which is how do we merge creativity and this bottom of the funnel, all this other stuff. The one thing I do know is I haven't got a theory on what a successful ad is for absolutely everyone, but I do know the most successful ads are written by the best talent. And the best talent want to work in channels that inspire them, that set them free, that don't replicate behaviors that they hate, that don't force feed people, that are liberated and matter. And I know that if we can create an environment where the best talent aren't drawn to it, we'll make the best work and the brands will succeed there. That I know.
Okay, well that sounds like a dangerously inspirational note on which to follow. But look, thanks very much to the panel. We got into a lot of interesting issues, and I think I was fascinated by it. So thank you to Linda, Philippa, Nils, and Rupert.